Hello guys and welcome to Tata Steel Chess. It's round number 11. We have 3 rounds left, 11, 12 and 13. We have a sole leader, Nodirbek Abdusattorov, going into this round, so let's see if someone can catch up. Let's start by taking a look at the gameplay between Arjun Erigaisi and Javokhir. Arjun is clearly not in form in this tournament. He is not playing his usual chess, but yeah, I believe it's normal when you play so many top level tournaments in a row. It's tough for these guys, but some of them are actually playing well, and Javokhir is having a fantastic event despite it being probably one of the first super tournaments in his chess career. So Queen a5 was played, Rook goes to d1, the Rook now is protected, Queen goes to c7, Rook goes back to e1, and now of course kind of inviting black to play Queen a5, and Rook d1 would probably end in a draw. But instead, of course, Javokhir doesn't go for a draw. He wants to win this chess game. Queen c4, I mean, he is up a pawn, so he has better chances to win. So he plays Rook e8. Now, the knight is kind of pinned, but it can always go back to, let's say, d3, not f3, because that would result in rook loss, takes, and then Rook e1. So knight would have to go to d3, but here we have f4. Very smart move. g5, trying to make sure to kick this knight off e5. Now rook goes to d1, rook d8, rook c1. And now, yes, there is a small threat of queen c5. But queen c5, even knight e2 won't work just because some king h2, and then you kind of have to take. Knight e6, f5, knight goes to f4, still keeping an eye on these forks. Knight g4, h5, knight f6 check, king g7 attacks the knight, knight goes back to e4, now king b7 is a mistake. So the thing with knight is, if knight now moves anywhere, king g2 is a checkmate, so king goes back to c2 protecting the knight, and now rook d4, putting extra pressure here. Rook e1, knight d3 attacking the rook, queen goes to d2, knight f4, back, and now king b4 attacking the rook and also putting pressure on the knight. Queen goes to c3, a5, so rook e4 is not possible due to the pin, so queen c3 is very smart move. a5, knight g5, queen c3 takes, and now it's minus 1.5 as you can see, and on this level those guys should be able to convert this pretty smoothly. Rook d2, king f1, rook g2 attacking the knight, rook goes to e4, rook g5, rook f4, and now king f6. Now, if white moves either of the pawns, rook goes to f5, rook trade, it's a win. Rook goes back, rook g3, rook h3, rook e3, now rook goes back to e5, the pawn is about to be taken, a4, rook e4, rook e7, king f5, and rook e4 protecting the pawn, and now there is no chance for white pieces, and Javokhir wins another game, is on 7 out of 11, and he joins Nodirbek as they're now tied for the first place after 11 rounds. So now it's either one of them wins and you know, the other guy draws and you know, like half a point, or we have a huge chance of potential tie breaks after 13 rounds. We had another interesting game between Pragg and Keymer, Vincent, so that's an interesting one. So you kind of see that the king is a bit weak. I mean, in my opinion, yes, it's an endgame, and you know, h3 pawn is kind of annoying. Yes, you kind of can make an argument that d6, this is under attack, but bishop f5 was played. So the best move here is actually to protect the pawn on e2 with bishop, but of course bishop f5 check looks logical. You look at the position, and the first thing you consider is checks like d6 and bishop f5. That's why you know, it's not surprising to see something like bishop f5 on the board. So we have king d7 and now knight d6 attacking the rook, attacking the bishop, and attacking the pawn. So, and now knight goes to g4, sacrificing the rook. So knight b7, you might be wondering what happens after knight e8. That's what I'm trying to figure out right here as well. Apparently after knight e5 and let's say takes, this knight is not going to get out. I'm not sure what happened here. So because all squares are blocked, and there's also a huge threat of actually almost checkmating the king. So we have knight b7 on the board, takes, now bishop b5, bishop d4 is a serious threat, rook goes to d1, knight goes to b8. because simply knight is under attack. So if, let's say, rook a6 here, I mean bishop d4 simple, and then rook e2, and the game basically ends. So rook d1, knight b8, rook a7, king e7, and now king is trying to walk somewhere to f6 to a safe place, knight a5, but black are already up a piece. d6, rook c8, bishop d5, rook e8, f3, rook c5, trying to maybe, you know, get something going. Takes, and now bishop e6. So exploiting the b4 move, because let's say rook d5 wouldn't work if b4 wasn't played, because b4 is weakening the knight on c4. So takes, bishop e6, rook d1, bishop c4, rook d7, and now two bishops are very powerful. Bishop goes to e4, rook b6, rook d8, bishop d6, f5, and those pawns are slowly moving. But the problem is for black is just these pawns are potentially somewhat dangerous. Rook d4, b6, rook b8, now bishop e4, rook b6 takes, and now it became kind of easy to play. So here apparently b4 was the best way to continue, just because you don't give any pawns back to black, and white could have held it a bit more. But now after rook d3 and then takes, I mean, there was no real good chance. Rook c3, this pawn's under attack, this pawn's potentially under attack. Now takes on b3, now comes back, walks the king, rook c2, and now you can already kind of sense that, you know, king is just not going to survive. And bishop c6 simply ends the game. So rook g2 immediately probably could have worked, even bishop f3, and basically rook g3 is about to happen, rook f3, and it's all over. But okay, I mean, whatever move happens, happens. And Vincent Keymer, I mean, he won 5 games in this event, but he also lost 4. I mean, he's showing insane chess. He only made 2 draws. He's one of probably the most, you know, kind of boxing guys, you know, who wants to win every single game and plays very interesting chess. I mean, that's very good to see. And for those people who says that classical chess is dead, I mean, look at this tournament. There are so many blunders, so many mistakes. Yeah, you kind of don't even understand how is this even happening. Like, those are top guys, and they're making just silly mistakes like you and me, like beginners, you know. But okay, we move on to the next one, and this is a very interesting one because Hans Niemann's playing with black pieces, and he is actually losing. He played b3, and apparently after c5, white has a huge advantage. The only counterplay, I mean, it's even insane that 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns against 6. Like, what is happening? We have rook b5 on the board, which was a mistake. You shouldn't give black access to a file, but after rook b5, rook e8, and suddenly there is some counterplay. Rook a3, b2, rook a2, king f3, and now c5. Like, it looks so dangerous because white pawns are just moving in the center, and white cannot do, and black cannot do anything about it. So we have rook f8, f5, rook a2. Like, it's insane technique by Hans here, and suddenly he became winning. Like, it's insane. Basically, the main mistake was around this moment when white were supposed to play king d4. And then, you know, you kind of support the pawns, you probably move a6, king d5, d6, d7. But instead he went back, and now Hans slowly improved, and he is up a rook. But still, it's a bit dangerous. I mean, you look at this position, if you look at this position where the black pieces he played with black, I mean, you kind of see that, you know, it might become dangerous pretty soon. So rook c2, c7, h2. The problem for white is, yes, h4, h2 pawn, they gotta be stopped. So rook b2 is played, rook h2, rook b6, and now Hans is slowly taking all pawns. And it's not that easy to defend them. So king f7, king f6, and now after rook a1, one loses his 3rd game in a row. He loses, and Hans is still in contention for the 1st place, because if he plays well enough, he can, you know, fight for the 1st place. And the last game of the day that I want to show you is between Anish Giri and Yağız Kaan Erdoğmuş. Yağız, who is having a fantastic event, he's still very young, he will beat those guys more and more often pretty soon, but for now, veterans can still show what they're capable of. So d4, c4, e6, we have knight f3 on the board, knight f6. And yes, there are multiple approaches. There's g3, there's simple knight c3, there's even e3, there's bishop f4, there's bishop g5, a lot of options. Knight goes to c3, bishop e7, and now bishop f4. Pawn goes to f3, takes bishop c5, and now queen c2, rook d1, and so on. So we have bishop e2, knight e4, takes. And after castle, bishop f6, c4 is played, takes, bishop c4, and you might be wondering why not take on a3. This capture is possible, but bishop d6 unfortunately will lose an exchange. So tactically, this pawn is still defended. Queen goes to a2, bishop e4, and now knight goes to d2, attacking the bishop. And pretty soon Yağız will make huge mistakes. Knight e5, bishop goes to d5, bishop d3, bishop e5, bishop e5. So once again, if bishop f1 is played, I think bishop f6 wins the game on the spot, because bishop e2 there is a simple rook e1, and you don't have a way to get the bishop out and defend f6. So bishop e5, knight f3 attacking the bishop, and once again, if bishop f1 is played, there is now knight e5, and that's exactly what has happened in the game. I assume there's gotta be some sort of let's say prep to it. Anish probably have seen these positions before, because you don't go for it unless you really know how to do and what to do. Apparently bishop b5 is 0-0-0 and bishop a6 is +2 for white. I mean, it's mind-blowing, but let's understand the difference. So let's say bishop b5 is played, and now knight f7. So now bishop comes back to e8. That's the crucial idea. And apparently, you know, there's not much progress that white can make. So knight g5, king h8, and now the best way to continue is h4, and computer evaluates it as basically equal. Instead, bishop a6, knight f7, and now king c3, h4. Same thing happens, g6, bishop e6, rook f7. So I assume there's no good way. I mean, bishop e6, now rook comes to g7 as well. And basically, let's, for example, pretend something like king g7, knight g5, king h8, rook g7. I mean, that's just for example. And now rook comes, and there is no defense. So rook f7 takes, and now queen e6, rook d4, blocking this long diagonal. Now king c7, rook f4, king c3, king e7, and there's no good defense. I mean, white will take on b7, the king is just extremely weak. There are possible sacrifices on g6 and rook f7 consecutive, or even e4, e5 as like the easiest plan. And Anish won. What a game by Netherlands player. And he won his third game of the event, and he also lost 3 games to Vincent, Jordan, and Matthias, and will be playing Arvin and Hans. I mean, that's not a bad pairing for last rounds. As far as results go, Javokhir and Nodirbek are tied for the first place. Javokhir hasn't lost a single game in this event. He is simply unstoppable. He won 3 games, and the rest of them were draws. Then Nodirbek, who actually lost to Anish Giri in round number 8. Then we have Jordan, Matthias, and Hans, who are within striking distance. And by the way, I think, so Hans is not going to be playing top 2. Matthias is playing Nodirbek tomorrow, so it's going to be complicated. Jordan plays Arjun and Pragg, so not top 2. Meanwhile, Javokhir plays Pragg and Thai. Thai with black is actually a good way. So if, let's say, Nodirbek and Javokhir come into the last round with equal amount of points, because Thai is not having a good event. He lost 3 in a row. He's losing to everyone. He is tilted. Javokhir will have a great chance of becoming a winner in this event, because Nodirbek is playing Matthias and Arjun, while Javokhir plays Pragg and Thai. So Pragg is not having a good tournament either, as you can see, 4.5 points. So let's see what happens tomorrow and on Sunday, and I'll see you very soon. Enjoy. Bye-bye.